Right. Oh, so you started, yeah. Oh, smart. Oh, sure.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for your indulgence as we took a few minutes to get set up tonight, but I'd like to welcome you to our planning board meeting this evening. You also see the Board of Health before us as well, too, and they'll be convening in a bit since we're going to be jointly looking at Millie's modification, which is a little bit further down in our agenda. Before we get to that, though, we've got a few orders of business to conduct for the planning board this evening, so if you'll just bear with me for a few minutes, we will get rolling. Just one thing in terms of public hearings tonight. There's a number of continuances that did not make it onto our original agenda. So 1913 Brian Ryder at 5.5 Marianne Drive is continued to 11:10. The Nantucket Theater Institute is continued to 11:10. Cumberland Farms is continued to 11:10, but I do have a question. There is a rumor that people may have come from off-island to deal with this. Is there anyone in the audience who is going to attend that? Okay, so that's duly continued to 11:10. Valero Road subdivision is continued to 1:12, and the Wrights Landing is continued to 11:10 as well. With those changes, board members, I'd accept a motion to approve said agenda.
So moved.
And do I hear a second? Second. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. We have minutes from August 11th and September 8th, which are due to be tabled. Catherine? Those minutes are tabled right now? Thank you. All right, so with that dispensed with, the first public hearing that's before us tonight is 1713, which is Ken and Diane Otts on 22 Marianne Drive.
Mr. Chairman, there's a staff report from Leslie Woodson-Snell in the packet. In it, she recommends that the board make a finding no relief is necessary relative to the driveway apron, and a special permit is issued to reduce the distance between the driveways from 5 to 3 feet.
Okay.
And that's the recommendation. Some work has been done with the adjoining property owner, and this is basically in conformance with that.
Fantastic. I see Mr. Otts here tonight. I don't know if you have anything to contribute outside of okay, good. I'm just opening the door. Board members, is there any discussion you want to have on this particular item? If not, and not hearing anything, let me open the public hearing on this. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to give any testimony on this?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, and do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously, and the pleasure of the board.
Motion to make a finding that no relief is necessary for the apron, and a special permit is granted to reduce the, what is it, the separation, Andrew?
Yes, from
Separation
reducing.
from 5 feet to 3 feet.
Okay.
Second.
That motion is now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next thing before us is 20-13, which is Michelle Whalen and Lyman Blake Jr., 13B Marianne Drive. Andrew, if you don't mind.
Mr. Chairman, in the same report dated October 16th, staff recommends that the board make a finding that no relief is necessary due to the changes in the, adopted at the town meeting, and the driveway is now configured to meet the requirements of the bylaw.
So no relief is needed for the apron, or no relief is needed, period?
We recommend that you make no
A finding.
regarding the apron, since the existing property owners paid to have the road paved.
And there's no special permit on this one.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so just a few things. Is there anyone here who is representing this? Mr. Lemberg, do you have any comment, or if you're good to go? Okay, great. Board members, is there any questions or concerns that you have on this? Not hear anything, let me open the public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this board on this particular item?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you. And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Pleasure of the board.
And the motion would be that no relief is necessary?
Correct.
That's it?
That's it.
That's my motion.
Well,
And-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, please, go
I would
ahead.
add that
Didn't
no
we change
relief
the
is
bylaw?
necessary, and you find that the existing condition meets the requirement of the bylaw.
So moved.
All right, do I hear a second? Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously, and I'm just going to wait a second right here. You got it? No, you don't.
She's wrecked around, I have time to look.
Excuse me for 1 second. Little technical difficulty with this hearing aid.
I'll work on it. Here it is.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Next thing before us at this point is going to be Millie's modification, 1914, which is 324 and 326 Nantucket Road. Before I proceed any further at this point, let me turn this over to Dr. McNabb so he can convene his board and get things rolling so we can consequently begin to deal with this jointly, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Should be interesting. So the Board of Health meeting of today is officially open. We have one agenda item. Ms. Weld cannot join us, and Mr. Vesco has recused himself, but we do have 3 members present. So we are open.
And if you could just have your members identify yourself, I know they've got nameplates up, but if you don't mind.
My name is Rick Atherton.
Thank you.
James Cooper?
Thank you. And we have Mr.
And
Ray here.
I'm Malcolm McNabb. I'm the chair.
Beautiful. And Mr. Ray here is tonight in charge of the Board of Public Health.
Do they have a quorum?
Yes.
And yes, they do have a quorum at this point because it's a
We do
five-member
have a
board.
quorum.
Yes. Just so you're aware. Okay. Mr. Badat, I see you approaching us at this point. So I'm going to open the floor to you, if you don't mind, and let's see where we begin to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, as well. My first meeting before 2 boards at once here. Rick Badat for the applicant Millie's Millie's Restaurant, Heather Creek LLC is the restaurant owner. I'm here with Bo Blair and David Scribner. They're 2 of the owners of the restaurant. Also with us tonight is Art Gasparo, our engineer. We're here tonight, obviously, at least initially, we had scheduled this meeting way back in May to report back to the planning board relative to how the summer went after the conditions were imposed on our special permit. And so at least initially, I'd like to go through how the summer went on that front, and then talk about how the summer went on the Board of Health front as well, which many of you know, and the planning board may not. To start with, the conditions that were imposed, we were required, as you probably remember, to have a parking attendant on site. What Millie's Restaurant decided to do is to go above and beyond and hire an off-duty police officer, because most of the discussion at the planning board hearing in May and April was relative to seating capacity and how that would affect parking and the parking situation that was present in 2013. We're happy to say that was very successful. The off-duty police officer was able to direct people away from the bike path, so there wasn't any parking on the bike path, which was a major concern initially, to manage the parking within the parking lots on site as well, and to really direct people to where they might be able to park if the parking lots were full. We also were required to do a survey of Washington Street and Nantucket Road. That survey is complete. I just received the survey today, and I don't know if I forwarded it on to Catherine, I think, but I doubt you got it. It was late in the day. Okay. So the purpose of that survey was to identify the owners on Nantucket Road in Washington that have fences within the public layout of the road, so that the DPW could then notice them to give the NRTA bus enough room to turn around, to create a safer condition there, to also allow people to potentially park, because they can't park if the street is closed down by the fences. So I've been in touch with Silvio at the DPW. I've sent that survey to him. I trust that DPW will start to notify people, and that will open up things even more for next year, we hope. We also were required to talk to the NRTA about potentially moving the bus stop. I did meet with them on site, and they were certainly open to suggestions. They mentioned that they've been there 18 years, and there's never been a problem. But you might remember that a lot of the discussion was the dangerous condition that the bike being on the bike, or excuse me, that the bus being on the bike path created, and particularly being in between the two driveways. We're going to look at moving the bus parking up past the third driveway on site. The NRTA suggested we could move it further onto our property, perhaps give them a license. I'm not sure that that's going to work out, but either way, we're still in discussions with them. So that's something that might work out as well in terms of the parking situation. We were also required to buy a cell phone for the manager of the restaurant, and distribute the number for the manager's cell phone to neighbors so that they could complain if there were any issues. We received a lot of public comment at the planning board hearing, and we did that. And we're happy to say that the manager received 0 complaints on that cell phone. 2 calls were made. They were both to order food. So, okay. Wrong number. We also were required to count seats. I think you'll hear a number of things about that tonight. The applicant bought new software to keep track of the seating count. And I've also, Catherine, do they have copies of the seating numbers that I sent today? Yeah. Okay. All right. Great. So I've presented, and again, this was, sorry for the late notice. That was today. We sent that around, but we've kept track of the number of people in seats at any given time, and we did that on a half-hour basis. We started from 4 to 10. We went from 5 to 9 eventually because the 10 o'clock hours and the 4 o'clock hours were, no one was there, really. And I think what you'll notice if you look at some of those seating counts is that there are certainly times when there's more than 124 people seated in those chairs that we have placed out there. But I think you also notice that it's corrected rather quickly thereafter. So the management and the hostess and everyone at Millie's has worked really hard to try to make sure that we conform to the 124 seats. We know that was an issue going in, and we've done everything we can to do that. The last thing we did, and you might remember just as an aside, is that we applied to have valet parking off-site. We made that application. The valet was supposed to go to Cambridge Street. We ended up withdrawing that application because the neighbors on Cambridge Street were clearly dissatisfied with it. So again, we didn't think we needed that to begin with, but we offered to do it to try to help the parking situation. And we tried to do that, but ultimately withdrew the application. The only real issue we had all summer was related to the Board of Health, which they're acutely aware of, and you may or may not be, I don't know. But we had there were 2 public health, Board of Health meetings. The first was in July. Stephen Cohen represented the applicant on both of those applications. The first one, it was unanimously decided by the board to track the planning board decision, to treat the seating as number of people in the seats, as opposed to just the number of seats on the premises. Because obviously, as we've discussed a number of times, because we have outdoor seating, we have indoor seating, there are a lot more than 124 seats on the premises. The second hearing was a violation hearing. The health agents visited Millie's at 7 o'clock on an August night, and the record shows that there, according to the inspection, there were far in excess of 124 seats in use. We've corrected the issue. We've complied since then. And we went to the hearing, the Board of Health, the Board of Health and the applicant, and I think Mr. Gasparo were all able to suggest some remedies to make sure that the septic system isn't compromised, more frequent pumping, review by an engineer to make sure the system isn't leaking. I think you're going to hear from Art in a few minutes that it's a brand-new system and it's working quite well. So just to conclude, we're very happy with the way that the conditions worked out for us. We were very concerned about them at the beginning of the year, but we feel we did a lot here to try to respect the neighborhood, clean up the parking situation, respond to the Board of Health as soon as we could and whenever we could, and try to remedy the situations that came up. And so I'll turn it over to Art just briefly so he can just tell you about the new septic system that was put in place this spring.
Arthur Gasparo, Blackwell Associates. I'm the civil engineer for Millie's. Just to quickly brief you, the soil absorption system portion of the septic system was replaced this past spring. So essentially it is an all new leaching portion of the system. The system is functioning. It meets all of the criteria for an upgraded Title V system for the flow that it is receiving. There was some discussion with the Board of Health with respect to the grease trap. The one, I think, incident, if you will, that they had of the time as part of when we upgraded the system, we added a filter to the outflow of the tank, and that filter requires maintenance. And essentially what that does is it helps to maintain the and promote the longevity of that soil absorption and leaching system. And so sort of what was quickly learned by the operators and what has since been done is that filter requires cleaning on a regular basis, and that was the spot. And since then they have also, following that Board of Health meeting, agreed to the more often of the pumping schedule. So what I'm here to let you know is essentially that there's a lot of discussion that surrounds the septic system. And again, there was a significant investment made by the owners and operators just last spring to bring that system up into compliance with the regulations. The other thing that we did following the Board of Health meeting had to do with, I met on site with a licensed plumber, and that was to confirm that with respect to the water supply, that everything was connected to town water. There was no use of the wells any longer for serving the facility beyond for the fire suppression system. So that's where there had been some ambiguity in terms of, while the wells were still on the property, what are they used for? And again, I met with the plumber. We were down and looked at everything. Essentially, all of the domestic water supply that's being used by the patrons in the facility is in fact tied to the municipal source. And with that, I'll be here and available for additional questions or concerns that may come up as they're related to the septic system.
Great. Before I open it up to the board members at this point, I will want to turn to staff initially and see if either Andrew or Richard have anything. Sir Andrew, anything at this juncture? You're going to, Mr. Ray?
If you'll excuse me for crossing over, as many people are on this side, and I'm going to use this mic over here.
Sure.
There may be some discussion, and I want to free up that mic. Richard Ray, Director of the Nantucket Health Department. We indeed have a brand new septic system out at Millie's, and the concern is, and always has been over the course of the summer, appropriate flow rates for that system. To take you briefly through it, that the system is rated at 4,870 gallons per day. That is permitted. The general store accounts for 200 gallons per day per Title V requirements. The three-bedroom dormitory accounts for 330 gallons per day per Title V requirements. And the 124 seats at 35 gallons per day per single meal service locations equates to 4,340 gallons per day for a total of 4,870 gallons per day. If the property was vacant, 220 gallons per day would be permitted. 330 gallons for an alternative design certainly could be utilized, for a total of 120,470 gallons per year. With existing flows, Millie's uses that same flow for the course of the year in 24 days. However, they are a grandfathered entity and are permitted the 4,870 gallons. We have no qualm about that. The septic system is directly upgradient and contributing increased nutrient loading to documented impaired water bodies within the DEP-approved nitrogen-sensitive area. There are a dozen dwelling units directly down gradient that are still on well water, hence the concern by the Board of Health that Millie stays within its parameters of 4,870 gallons. This came down this summer to seating within the establishment. I provided my board with water table charts from the Wannacomet Water Company denoting an overage on numerous occasions in August, as much as, please excuse me while I pull that chart up, as much as 8,000 gallons per day. The concern, again, is seating. 124 seats were agreed upon by the establishment with the Board of Health. However, when my inspectors have gone out there on 2 separate occasions, they have found that, contrary to what may be reported on the chart from the establishment, that they were substantially over the number of seats on any given night. With regard to the water meter readings, we had readings as high as 11,795 gallons, 8,422 gallons. In August, there were well over 50% nights that they were either at or over the allotted gallonage for the food service establishment. Certainly, once Labor Day showed up, it tapered off substantially, which is anticipated, as businesses of that sort certainly lose customer appreciation and customers as we move into September. Again, seating is an issue. We have found that within the establishment there are finger bars and high-top tables. Although no seats, per se, are applied with these particular types of tables, it has been the determination of the Department of Environmental Protection that these high-top tables and these finger bars should be counted in the food service associated with the establishment. To that end, I am going to ask my board tonight to approve 4 seats per finger bar and 3 seats per high-top table. This is not in addition to the 124 seats currently in use at the establishment. These seats will have to be included in the 124 seats within that establishment. We cannot continually have an overage over 124 seats as agreed upon by the Planning Department and the Board of Health, and is indeed the figure utilized for maximum tables and seating within Title V.
Mr. Ray, I have a question for you.
Yes.
I trust you're all set, right?
Pardon me?
You're done at the moment, right?
At this
All right, 'cause
point?
I do want to turn it over to my board, but I do have a really quick question for you. I appreciate that you did get information from the water company regarding water usage out there because it directly ties into intake and output, and consequently, do you have copies of that for these boards?
I certainly, yes, I can certainly get that for you,
Okay,
yes.
because I, for one, would have probably appreciated having that before me tonight to look at that, because I think that is a germane issue to some of our discussion.
As it is directly germane to the septic system, I did provide it to my Board of Health, which is indeed the controlling agent in this particular case.
Right, but...
We do control the seating.
Well, we're going to, I think we need to discuss that, but more importantly, if you have a copy of that before you, I'd like to be able to share that with my board tonight, because that really is an important thing for us to be tuned into as well, since that was a fundamental part of our decision.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Linda, go ahead.
He's coming down.
I don't know.
Can I get a copy of that, too?
Take mine.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Are you sure?
Yep. Every restaurant has one thing in common, especially in the busy summer season. they have people standing, waiting to be seated. You don't have an open seat and all of a sudden you go out on the sidewalk and say, I got 4 open seats. You will have people standing on that deck, waiting to be seated when a family of 4 or whatever leaves.
Any restaurant has that,
You're not
yes.
counting those people standing, waiting in line.
No, we are not.
You're just standing, they just have to be seated or standing at one of the actual finger
That is
bars or
correct.
tie tops. Okay, because there are, every once in a while, there are seats on that porch strictly for use for people trying to wait for their table. You're not counting those guys. There
On a-
used to be bench seats up there.
On a particular evening, when an inspection was done by Artel Crowley, and his report reads, last night we did a seat and occupant count, and this is what was found. Front outdoor seating area, 49 people seated, eating and drinking. Rear outdoor seating area, 30 people seated, eating and drinking. Rear outdoor seating area, indoor first floor bar area, 12 people seated, eating and drinking. All of the individuals counted were seated, eating and drinking, and that was an overage. And there were 2 nights, the only 2 nights that we actually went out and did this, we found overages both nights.
Now, septic is the one thing I just have them come, pump it out, and leave. That's all I know about septic. But when you're getting the over-gallonage, are you attributing all of that to bathroom usage, or a substantial portion of it is being used to clean the dishes, the glasses, and the silverware?
Title V of the State Sanitary Code notes for food service establishments, there shall be 35 gallons applied to each seat within the establishment.
Okay.
That is a 35-gallon usage over the course of a day, 24 hours, and that includes not only ware washing, it includes washing the tables, it includes water used to provide drinks and things of that nature. 35 gallons per seat per day.
So that includes the dishwashers and all that stuff?
It includes all of that, yes. This is a somewhat unique situation, as we only have 2 food service establishments on Nantucket that have in-ground septic systems. Everything else is on a sewer. One is Walwinnett, and the other one is Millie's.
Right.
Mr. Oppen, go ahead, yeah.
Just to clarify, Maya Comet has a system too? I wanted to be clear, when you say in-ground system, I thought the golf course had a...
I'm sorry, you're correct. The golf course does, but a food service is a very small part of the actual
But they
flow.
do have food service, I just want
Yes.
to be clear.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. McLaughlin.
Mr. Ray, I have a comment. From 25 June to 7 September, this report here was submitted, I guess, by Millie's in Nantucket. It's submitted by Millie's in Nantucket?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I counted it up here. 21 times, 21 days out of those days, 71 days, the count was over 124
Yes,
maximum on the seats.
that's correct.
I just want to confirm it. Thank you.
Yeah. Of the 71 days that they were in operation, 34 of those days denoted at least one overage in the course of the evening. That's a 48% overage rate as far as individuals seating in the restaurant are concerned. The problem comes here to define seating. Again, Title V notes it as seats. However, discussions with Title V, and particularly the inspectors associated with Title V, have assured me that we must count high-top tables and finger bars as individuals will utilize those surfaces and do utilize those surfaces and have all summer as eating stations. So we are going to count those. Title V supports this, and in fact, Title V considers this the appropriate approach for this. We are not trying to limit them in any way other than to their 124 individuals being served meals at any one time.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Robidette. I just want to follow through with something, but go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, Title V does not support these being seats, period. We're talking about a 12-inch piece of wood on the wall in the bar area where someone is able to have a drink, wait for their table to be seated, and serve food. Now, I'm not going to stand here and tell you someone couldn't get a plate of nachos there. They might, while they're waiting for the 2-hour wait to sit down at Millie's. It's a 2-hour wait. And we put people in the bar area, upstairs and down, to wait. And they might do that. But are you going to call it a seat because someone might get a plate of nachos? That's inappropriate. And I might add that what Richard is talking about, the DEP or the Title V inspectors or the DEP making a determination, again, incorrect. I think the record shows, I think probably from the Board of Health meeting last week, that Richard got an email from Brian Dudley, who's a low-level employee at the DEP, who's going to respond any way Richard wants him to because he emails him all the time. That's a fact. So, listen, hang on a second.
I want to just, I find your characterization, in my opinion, without foundation, and I just want to make that for the record.
Okay, yeah, sure. And that's why I wanted to finish.
Mr. Offen, I'd ask you to go through the chair in the future.
I have a chair here, too.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Run through you. I raised my hand.
I didn't see you raise your hand, sir. That's okay. Thank you. But he's talking. Anyways, let's proceed.
I wanted to finish because what we've done is we've hired an attorney in Boston who deals with the DEP regularly. And that person has been talking with the attorneys at the DEP Southeast Regional who have specifically said that any email from Brian is simply guidance. You're free to make any determinations you want, a reasonable determination like you did in July about where seats are. And you're free to make the determination Richard wants you to, but I don't want it to be characterized as the norm that that a finger bar, if that's what it's called, is somehow a seat. It's inappropriate to call it that. The other thing I want to mention also, folks, is that this talk about flow, and there's 12,000 gallons of flow or whatever. And Richard knows, and what he left out is that there was an ice machine connected to the system, and once that was disconnected, significantly reduced flow. Having said that, we shouldn't be talking about flow. We shouldn't be talking about this being a vacant lot with 220 gallons per day. The fact is, it's a restaurant. It's not vacant, and it's always been a restaurant. So, and Title V, which is right, is determined by seats. So you can't say, hey, you can have 124 seats in your restaurant, and then come back the next day and say, you're 10 gallons over on flow. You're 1,000 gallons over on flow. It doesn't work that way for residents. Residents is determined by bedrooms. You wouldn't say you're going to the bathroom too much. You would say, hey, you have 4 bedrooms on a 3-bedroom system. You need to cut it down. It's the same concept. So to say that we can take a look at flow after the fact and actual readings is incorrect.
I just have one question, though. Supposing we had 124 seats as defined by chair, but you had 100 stands, and you had then 200, 300 people in the restaurant, or 180 we had one night, or those people were waiting for an hour standing there and eating. Isn't that out of the spirit and the intent of Title V? Because the point of the 124 is an algorithm based on estimated flows over time, and it's for the good of the environment. So
I agree.
I have a real problem with, because if someone's going to stand there at one of these standing places for an hour or two consuming food, they might as well be sitting in a seat.
I don't disagree with that. Look, I mean, can I stand here in front of you and say, if we wipe out every table, right? I mean, let's take it a step further.
Yeah,
we
wipe
out every table, and we'll just, everyone will be
people.
standing, eating tacos. And do I think that's in the spirit of Title V? No, I don't. I mean, to be very clear, no, I don't. But having said that, we have a certain number of seats there, and it's way over 124. And there are a lot of seats, by the way, it's in the health agent's report from the inspection, that are empty. And it's empty because we have a 2-hour wait, and we're trying to comply.
There were more than 124 people being served at those different times. And that's the point and the intent of Title V.
I understand. I get what I'm saying is that we can't just arbitrarily call something a seat because someone's standing there. I mean, what makes it a seat? If he wants to count the people who are getting meals standing at a finger bar, that I could accept, right? I mean, in other words, if we're going to count in our system someone who's standing at a finger bar for an hour, who gets a meal, like you said, that's one thing. But to arbitrarily call it a seat when, keep in mind, Richard's talking about percentages of when we're over. Look at the list. If you want to talk about percentages, I would say 90% of the counts are well below 124. There's an hour and a half, folks, where it's busy every night. So I have a tough time accepting that, a certain spot, because it's has a piece of wood on top of it, is a seat. Unless someone's going to eat there.
This could be like counting angels on the head of a pin, and I don't want to start getting arguing seats. The intent of Title V, the algorithm is based on 124 people consuming food at some place, okay? That's the way I understand it.
And
you're
Malcolm,
almost agreeing with
and I'm pretty close to agreeing with you, yes. But what I cannot, you're right. But what I cannot agree with is just arbitrarily saying, hey, look, that area over there, that's 4 seats tonight, and every night thereafter. And that's not right. I mean, there must be a way, maybe, like I said, maybe we can count them because our system is based on checks outstanding, and that's how we make our count. So maybe there's a way to count, if there's 4 people standing there, 2 people ordered a meal, that's 2 seats. So there's 2 seats we can't put in the dining room. I think, and I think I could advise my clients to live with that, but I'm really having a tough time just arbitrarily saying it. That's the problem I have with it, Malcolm.
Mike, here's my question. The system is designed for 4,800 gallons per day, okay? So if you're running more than 4,800 gallons through that thing day in and day out, you're overloading the system. Title V says the system is designed for that much water, and that's the amount of water that should be going through that system, and it is designed for 124 seats. 124 seats equals 4,800 gallons per day. So if you have 170 people in there, the system isn't working. You're overloading the system.
I agree.
That is Title V.
I agree. If we're seating 170 people, we're overloading the system.
So what
if we're seating 100,
what do you call it when you're overloading 17 out of 20 out of 17 out of 23 days? You were more than 124 people. For those 17 days, you were overloading a system that maxed out at 4,800.
By the way, take a look at the numbers for a half an hour. And I'm not saying it's what we want. We don't want more than 124 seats. Please don't misunderstand me.
The system is designed for a certain amount, and you have to live within those parameters.
I agree. I agree completely. I agree completely. I disagree about how we count it. I mean, I believe me. We don't want. I'm not here telling you. I think we should have more than 124 people there. Take a look at the numbers. There are times when it goes over, and it's quickly corrected. All we can do is try to seat the people, get them in, get them out. We get them in and out as fast as we can, and we don't want to overload the system. We have to pay for this system if it breaks. We just paid for one, so we understand it. And, let's keep in mind, folks, that, and this is something we said at the Board of Health meeting in August, is that this is Nantucket's bathroom. That the town of Nantucket doesn't have a bathroom down there, and they've tried to put a bathroom down there, and it's been defeated. And this is it. So I'm not saying that's the reason, right, why there's 12,000 gallons, because we know it's an ice maker, we know there's a lot of people there, but that's part of it, folks, too. So, again, all I'm saying is we don't want more than 124 seats. We're trying to comply as best we can. It's a half an hour, it's an hour for 4 weeks a year, those end of July, end of August, that were, that are the hardest part.
If you filled all the seats and all the tables, inside and outside, with people, how many people would do that?
A lot. I mean, I think one of the...
What do you think?
Like 180 based on, and the reason I say that is because that's one of the inspections said we counted chairs, and there were 180.
So why don't you take the seating down to 124, and then we don't have a problem.
The reason for that is that a lot of those are outside seats, Jim. I mean, you know how it gets in Nantucket. The fog rolls in, everyone wants to come inside. Now we have 60 seats inside. Now it's a 3-hour wait. That's really the biggest reason for it.
But you still might have a 3-hour wait, but you're still only allowed 124 seats. I don't understand how you keep saying, we don't want to have any more than 124 seats, but you generally do have more than 124 people sitting there eating.
Well, the Board of Health and the Planning Board have decided that we can have 124 people seated there eating, not 124 seats.
We're starting to get into semantics again. I think we should see if anyone else has questions.
I appreciate that, because there's really two things I want to do. We're about a half an hour in. I'd like to give about an additional 45 minutes to this as well. If we need to, we'll continue the meeting, because we do have other things before us tonight. So I just want to kind of put a little bit of a time limiter. We've also got the public who'll want to talk about things as well.
Be able to come back.
So I just, and I want to be sensitive toward that as well, too. So yes, I did see his hand up. I just want to kind of get this out now, because, I mean, we could spend a lot of time on this as well, too, and I want to make sure that it's put into its appropriate settings here. Mr. Wright.
If I may, thank you. I would like to read an email from Brian Dudley, who is indeed the Southeastern Regional Coordinator for the Department of Environmental Protection. In response to your inquiry below, please be advised that the Massachusetts DEP's position is that tables and bars at a food service establishment where food and drink is served constitute seats for purpose of determining sewage flow pursuant to 310 CMR 15,000 Title V, regardless of whether the patrons are sitting or standing. In this instance, the finger bars and high-top tables you described would be considered as part of the seat count for purposes of determining compliance with the facility's disposal system construction permit, period. That seems pretty straightforward to me from a state agency. Those are my guidelines. With regard to the flows that Council did mention, yes, there was an ice machine, which was a water-fed ice machine, which was discontinued and removed in the early parts of summer, and counts dropped significantly. However, the counts of 8,400 and 11,700 and numerous counts of over 5,000 gallons occurred after that piece of equipment was removed.
Good.
That's helpful.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Markinger.
Yeah. I was wondering if Art could shed any light on, is there a difference between the design flow of 35 gallons a day and the actual water flow that the water company is reporting?
Yes. And you have that chart in front of you.
No, I understand that. But I mean, as far as you design it for 35 gallons a day per seat, does it make any difference that you're using the extra water as far as the septic system is concerned?
No, I don't. I mean, I think that Title V has a specific provision that requires the use of the chart for on a per seat basis, and not to substitute water meter readings. So I think the other thing to consider is that it's the design flow of the system is based on gallons per day, but then as well, one thing to consider is over, say, the course of the year as well for the system. It's not on an annualized basis under Title V, but it is another factor, I think, that could be considered overall with respect to the system, is that, the general seasonality, and that should there be a small spike on a particular day, or that it's not necessarily the end of the system because that happens. But no, we're not substituting water meter flows for design flow per Title V.
Yes. Thank you.
If I may, two instances. First of all, if we could allow a larger system to go in for Matic at Millie's, for Millie's Restaurant, I would have no problem with that. We could certainly design and approve that. However, that can't happen because they are grandfathered for the flow that they have now. It will never, ever increase other than what it is right now. And I think Mr. Casparo would probably agree with me that as a seasonal system, by the time that system has developed a biological mat around that leach facility and is functioning appropriately, it's time to close. So we have to start it up all over again, which means that effluent is going into less than filtered sand, going straight down to the groundwater and heading straight for Hither Creek and Nantucket Harbor. Those are my concerns. It's an environmental concern, period.
I had one other thing.
Go ahead.
When we had our meeting, I thought we were talking about 124 people being in the restaurant. Total people, including people at the bar, people. I think that's what I'm not understanding. Because it seems to me what you're saying now, and I'm not saying you didn't say it,
Sure.
that maybe I misunderstood, was that there's 124 people eating, and that's what these counts reflect.
Yep.
But there could be 30, 40 people at the bar, 10 or 15 waiting besides the people at the bar.
Yeah.
And so that when Richard or his helpers go out to count, you end up with 180 people.
Well, I don't
Something
think he's
like that?
counting the people standing, in fairness to
Oh,
him.
no?
No, but let me say this, more even. I mean, first of all, the people who are sitting at the bar, we need to count those people. We don't dispute the fact that we need to count those people.
Okay.
But the people who come there and wait 2 hours, who have not sat down, we aren't,
Yeah, no, I agree
we
with
never
that.
expected to count those
He
people.
hasn't, he didn't count those.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
The issue comes to be those people standing at high tops and
Yeah.
finger bars, and are they seats?
Well, I thought we had left it, there was going to be 124 total people. I didn't care if there was 1,000 seats, if there was only 124 people.
At our
you know,
August,
at any one time.
At our August 21st public hearing on this, we kind of came back to that, to
Yeah,
124 people.
Right.
Because we got nuts trying to figure
Yeah,
out
yeah.
what a seat was.
Yeah.
People's even worse.
Did you have
Figure out who
something?
people are?
People trying to count people is even worse.
Can you turn your microphone on if you're going to?
Trying to count 124 people is insanity, because you've got somebody standing here waiting, they're not eating, they've been there 5 minutes, they're not eating, they're not drinking, they're just waiting for their seat. Seats is the most tangible way of counting how many people are actually eating at the restaurant. Trying to count people hanging out in the parking lot waiting for a seat. Do you count those guys, or you don't count them until they sit down? Do you count them, but they're waiting for seats? Do they stand out on the out in the bike path waiting to come on? You can't do that. Seats is the only way to go. It's a question of whether we agree that the finger bars and the high tops that don't have seats under Title V, one is saying that they don't count under Title V in a literal interpretation. One is saying that some guy that Richard deals with all the time from the Southeast office says that you can theoretically count them. Where do you go from there? And so I got to think about this for a while, but I don't know where to go from here, but I'm not going to conjecture. I am not going to reinterpret Title V beyond the literal provisions included in Title V. So I'm a little uncomfortable with some of the directions that discussion's going.
Well, may I take you out of that uncomfortable zone for a brief moment by simply saying this is not a determination to be made by the planning board. This is strictly a determination on flow capacities for a septic system, which need to and shall be made by members of the Board of Health. I offer no disrespect to the planning board for that. I'm simply reminding everyone that this is a determination that will be made strictly by the Board of Health. Thank you.
Go ahead.
But Richard, as Joe was saying, we approved 124 people, okay?
Based upon.
And I think that the guy, Mr. Dudley, I'm sure that there's plenty of places on the Cape, in fact, most of them probably are on septic, right, on the Cape? They have so many septic problems.
Conceivably.
They don't have sewer like we do. We're very fortunate that we have sewer here. And most of the restaurants on the island, except for the three, and then I think Sankaty Golf and Beach Club too, right? Are they on sewer?
Yeah, no, you're
They're
right.
on septic,
Yeah,
right?
no, you're right.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, I understand what you're saying about Board of Health versus planning, but I think as far as the planning side, we need to characterize, okay, the seats outside and the seats inside, doesn't matter how many there are. If it's raining, they have to be able to have 124 inside, because they're allowed to have 124 inside the building for fire, for fire. I mean, I'm just saying, you're allowed to have 124 in the building.
Yep.
Okay. I think the biggest thing is the waiting. Like, there are some places in some restaurants in some towns, there's one in Woburn, I believe, you can't have a beer where you wait. You can't have one. Now, if, I don't know what, we're considering the finger bar thing as a waiting place. Mr. Dudley's saying that you can eat there. I agree. I've ate a nacho at one of those things myself. It's nothing wrong with that. You're sitting on a stool. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's certainly better than not getting anything, right? So you don't want to send the people down to the beach to look at the sunset or something. It's kind of weird. They found a place to park, and now you're telling them to leave because they can't be on the premises drinking because it's part of the number. So this is a complicated issue. We never discussed the waiting part during the public hearing, Rick. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I feel like Joe. I don't care if there's 1,000 seats out there. If there's 124 people, to me, that doesn't matter how many seats there are, especially with outside and the weather and stuff like that.
I think we'd agree with that.
So I'm just saying that I think on the planning side, we got to figure out something about what is considered someone eating, being seated versus waiting and sitting, or waiting and standing. I think that that's where, as far as the flow part, that's a separate issue. And
well, I think
I don't. With respect, I don't think it's that complicated. I mean, I think waiting and sitting is the hard, right? Is the harder one. I think if someone is seated at the finger bars,
they're seated.
I think they're seated.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they're seated. I think the hard thing to wrap our head around is someone standing at the finger bars and that person getting a nacho.
I was standing and watching that guy sing.
That is still a food service.
That was good. That guy.
And I think Richard's position is that that's a seat. And look, I don't know what the, first of all, the seats calculation, again, the whole flow calculation is based on the seats. And when someone, in the Title V code, when it says 35 gallons per day per seat, that's not necessarily saying one person coming there, or 10 people coming there over 10 hours is going to produce that. It's taking into account a lot of things.
But
someone standing there drinking.
But if you had to remove an ice machine and buy ice and have it delivered with a truck to save water, that's preposterous. I mean, I can't even believe that we had to do something like that. That's confusing. So in other words, water is water, just like when we have the II issue with the town. It doesn't matter what's going in the pipe. If it's water, it's considered sewage. It's counted as flow.
Yeah.
So we're sort of in the same track with this. So I think that we have to separate out these issues without talking about it all night.
No, I know.
I think that we have to find a way to come to some agreement with the seats versus people part. And I do agree, by the way, we need to talk about the fourth thing. Is that you came down too, didn't you, Richard?
What's that?
The what?
With a table thing.
Yes. Yeah, we came down.
mean,
we had discussions with DEP, and they agreed with us
How do you feel about that?
on the lesser
Going
figure.
from 6 to 2. Remember it was 6 before? We went to 4 now.
6 to 4? You mean on the?
6 to 4.
Discussions with Title
Picnic table?
V concerning high-top
picnic
tables
table thing.
and concerning finger bars. We originally went for 6 people sitting
I remember that.
at a finger bar, and we originally went for 4 or 5 people sitting at a high-top table. In discussions with DEP, we came down to what we thought was an agreeable figure between DEP and the Nantucket Health Department of an assignment of 3 individuals per high-top table as seating, and 4 individuals at a finger bar, no matter how long it is, as seating, because meals are being served at both of these locations routinely. And that's all we did.
But if we count people, it doesn't really matter. So that's what I'm saying.
I do, yeah, I know. I mean,
All right.
You have to find, are those people standing at a finger bar, for example, then are they counted or not?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We have to determine what, if we had a waiting area with picnic tables and they were just sitting there and not drinking, to me, they're just waiting. to be seated.
That-
I'm just
Correct.
saying, if that's
All
what we
right,
would do.
gentlemen, let's refine the conversation to kind of like one or two people at a time, because this is opening itself to 3 or 4. Thank you.
Well, we've
I
got
appreciate
the
it.
Board of Health here, Barry, and this is
I
the
know.
first time we've done it.
No, I know that. I know.
And we told the people from Nantucket knew that we were going to have this meeting in October. We didn't know the Patriots were playing tonight, and we didn't,
That has nothing, yeah, I know.
So that's a kind of a problem. That could have an outfall.
Don't hold that
outflow
against
issue.
us.
That's what they made DVR.
You've got an
We're playing
hour.
the Jets, so it's not as bad.
And that's why God
But
created
I
DVRs.
mean, we need to get to something. And I hate to have these people from Nantucket come here in the off-season and then just disappear.
I agree.
I mean, I just want to reiterate that, again, the flow calculations are, they're based on seats, but they take into account other things, people standing around, whether there's a table in front of them or not. So, and I don't know what the answer is with the flow. If obviously we would increase the septic system again, not to get more seats, but we would if we could. And I don't know if it's, and then we can't. I don't know if the answer is, a fancy porta potty to deal with the flow. I don't know, maybe Mr. Visco can speak to that. I don't know.
Mr. Chair, maybe we should go to a public hearing, because
I'm feeling we're close to there.
I think we're
I'm inclined to agree with you. I just would like a minute, because I really haven't said too much of anything, but just a minute's worth of time. Richard, do you count seats in every restaurant, or is it just the Title V ones that come under your purview?
We do not count seats in every restaurant over 25. That is the cutoff for bathroom facilities for patrons. However, if the food service establishment has
Yeah.
a septic system, an in-ground septic system,
Okay.
we have to count seats because that is how the flow to Title V septic systems is measured.
Thank you. You and I are now on the same page at this point. That makes more sense to me, because what, to me, is more germane at this point is the report you got from the water company, because therein lies a good deal of what's going on. And I can respect that from a Board of Health perspective as well, too. But I'd challenge any point that seating takes on a variety of different meanings. For the building inspector, there's safety code. Seating takes on a different meaning at this point. From a planning perspective, seating takes on a different meaning because there's traffic generation involved.
I agree with that, yes.
So I think we need to all look at seating in it's not just a seat. A seat, depending upon which board is interacting with what, carries a lot of different weighting to it. And I think those are some of the things we need to be a little sensitive toward here as well, too.
I'm not asking for a reduction in seating.
No, I'm not, and I'm not hearing you say that either. But certainly some of the statistics I think that were provided by the restaurant, your information that's come through, and then the information that's come through the water company leads us to a few very different avenues, and that's why I'm thinking this will be a second meeting or so. But anyways.
Input should equal output.
Dr. McNabb was right, and thank you for giving me a minute to do that. What I'd like to do is I'd like to open up to the public. Just a few things. When you come up to the microphone, please identify yourself for the record and give me your address as well, too, especially if you're in the butter. We do want to try to keep our comments focused as well, too, so I'd ask you to please be a little respectful in terms of the time you're allotting for your comment. If you're going to get up and agree with one of your neighbors at this point, that suffices very nicely. You don't have to repeat the whole litany of what they just said. So you're welcome to get up and say, I agree with my neighbor, and that keeps it really focused. So thank you for doing that, and I just ask you to raise your hands and we'll call upon you. So anyone want to comment on this with the public hearing being open? Mr. Stott, good evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Health, and the Planning Board. Let me say at the outset that Nantucket folks love Millie's. They want it to succeed. The problem is it's a victim of its own success. But we also want compliance with the conditions imposed by the Planning Board and adherence to sound environmental practices. Now, to its great credit, the Millie's Restaurant has gone a long way in addressing the traffic and parking problems that we were concerned about, but the cap on patrons is an entirely different story. We've heard testimony from Mr. Ray about the number of times and the extent to which the 124-seat cap was exceeded last year. To go into some specifics about that, the August inspection found that there were 166 people eating and drinking at tables. That's 30% more than the 124 that was approved. In addition, there were 32 people standing who were eating and drinking, for a total of 74 people over capacity, 62% over the 124-seat capacity. And then there were 30 additional people standing and waiting. It's a difficult problem to address, but the fact is that there's, in this instance, 228 people on the premises. And a number of those folks are going to be using the facilities, which, with that number of people using a septic system that's rated at a 487 gallons a day per capacity, this really puts the septic system, in our view, at risk of failure. It will increase nutrient loading and really endangers the environmentally sensitive watershed. Now, we've heard a lot of discussion at the Board of Health hearing and tonight about the number of and placement of seats, both indoors and outdoors. But the number of seats is not an environmental issue, except to the extent that Title V looks at it that way. The issue is the number of people on the premises that are using the facilities. Now, if the 74 patron overcapacity that was documented is a chronic or continuing violation of the conditions that have been imposed, this could increase the septic flow by more than 2,000 gallons a day, about 50% over capacity. Now, I'm a member of the town's sewer planning work group, which has been grappling with the problem of septic systems contributing more than 50% of the nitrogen found in Nantucket waterways. So I see this as a very, very serious problem that needs to be addressed. Accordingly, the Nantucket Residents Association, which I represent, would propose that the following steps be considered. First, that no one who is not seated should be served food or drink. In other words, in order to be served, you have to be at a seat, however that might be defined. There should be regular unannounced inspections to ascertain the number of patrons and the number of seats in the restaurant. And we could propose that water usage be regularly tracked as a means of estimating septic flow. And this could be reported on a regular basis, daily or weekly perhaps, by Millie's and spot checked by the Board of Health, especially on weekends. Fourth, the Health Department and Board of Health should be kept advised of the results of these inspections and water use. And fifth, and most importantly, meaningful penalties should be imposed for exceeding the number of patrons and seats and for a septic flow that exceeds the capacity of the system. I think these penalties should be progressive. For example, the first violation might result in a written warning. The second violation might result in the closing of the restaurant for a short period of time, maybe 3 days, maybe a weekend. The third violation, you might consider rolling back the maximum capacity to 89 seats from the 124 on a permanent basis. Perhaps the fourth violation, the Board of Health could consider closing the restaurant for a longer period of time. Maybe 2 weeks would send a message that compliance is important. And if there are continuing violations, perhaps the Board of Selectmen could consider revoking the liquor license. This is a very serious issue that folks in Nantucket who really care about the quality of our ponds and harbors and creeks really hope that these two boards collectively can address and come up with a resolution. Thanks for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Go ahead. You're welcome. How are you tonight?
Good evening. My name's Maureen Phillips. I'm a board member of the Nantucket Residents Association, and I am just adding a bit to Charlie's comments, which I wholeheartedly agree with. What we have here is a place that is, in fact, a victim of its own success. And we are trying to shoehorn something into a place that it really cannot fit. If you look at the map of Nantucket Harbor and you look at the Nantucket watershed, and is close to 4 different bodies of water. I couldn't figure out from the map exactly how close, but we are talking about what feels like, as a resident, oh, I'm sorry, and I live at 30 Long Pond. So I look right out. I have pond frontage there, and I'm guessing I have part of Millie's in front of me as well. And this is a restaurant which has morphed from a 12-seat snack bar into this 124-seat, to our mind, disaster. One thing that Charlie said I would really like to underscore is rolling back the capacity to 89 seats. This May, when the failure, when they had a capacity of only 89 people, and instead, in our view, they were rewarded by getting additional capacity to 124, having failed during the summer of 2013. Regular seats, and let us give them a year and see if they can get through it without major violations. Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience wishing to testify on this? I just want to leave it open to the audience, if you don't mind. If you want to say something, but you have no objection.
I have no objection. I know you guys have a long meeting, especially the planning board members, and I appreciate you listening to me again. And forgive me, Board of Health members who I've never stood before, and with the exception of Rick, don't know me that well, if I'm sounding indignant, but the tennis club out in Nantucket, and it's the same thing every time. You know, these people, no matter what, they will complain about the commercial enterprises here. Last May, you know, to say that none of this was talked about regarding the septic system in May and April and February when we had public meetings, the whole thing is related to the septic. And she said, what's the capacity? So that, you know, it is all related to the septic. And, you know, nobody mentioned anything about the fragile ecosystem in May and February and all those meetings. And now they'll jump on any bandwagon they can, because Richard has an issue with the septic system, and we're trying to help, we're trying to fix it. But now they're worried about the ecosystem. So forgive me. I mean, but I'm fed up too. So.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience, first of all?
Just to answer your question, we don't have a problem with the septic system. It seems that you people have a problem with the septic system. The septic system was designed for 124 seats. So the septic system is what it is. It's not that we're trying to move anything. We're not trying to change numbers. We're not trying. So I think everybody's got together. It has to get together to understand that it's going to support 124.
Each using their bathrooms counted in the flow that's putting them over the 4,800 and change that they're allowed to have.
No.
How not?
That septic system is designed for the capacity of 3 locations. The food service establishment, which DEP has said will have a minimum of 200 gallons per day because it's a small store and only has a small square footage. There is no allowance made for individuals coming off the beach and using restrooms. I don't know that Millie's permits that. I don't know.
You're not answering the question. What's putting them over?
What's putting them over?
You're not answering the question. I'm not sure you can. There is a substantial number of people coming off that beach that are not eating at this establishment, that are not part of the 124 seats, standing at the bar, standing wherever the hell they're sitting, that are using these facilities is their flow putting them over what they're supposed to have per seat?
Not only is what's occurring in the restaurant putting them over their allowed gallonage, if there are indeed individuals coming off the beach and utilizing the facilities, they are indeed contributing that and apparently putting them way over what their flow should be, if Millie's allows that.
For the town's benefit, because we couldn't get a bathhouse out there, because we went to court over it.
Hi, can I
I
say
was
one thing?
involved with that.
Sir. Bo Blair, owner of Millie's. Thank you. I would like to just say one thing. We have gone out of our way since we've opened to become the public bathroom for the entire west end of the island. We have hundreds of people a day using our facilities. We open our facilities early in the morning, 9 a.m., 8 a.m., when the market opens, so bikers that come out to the west end of the island, and there are hundreds of them during July and August, can come in and use our facilities. We've never turned away one person who is a visitor, who hasn't, a person who is not a patron of ours, and said they can't use our bathroom. So I feel like, it needs to be discussed that we have become the public bathroom for the whole west end of the island of Nantucket. Thank you.
Well, I don't live in Nantucket. Ron Bocage, I live on Milk Street. Ron Bocage. A couple of things kind of occur to me. One is that if you're having trouble counting the people who are eating in a facility, you're going to have a damn sight more trouble counting the people coming off the beach to use the bathroom. Ms. Williams. The second thing that occurs to me is that the problems that are occurring are not during the times when people are just coming out in the morning to use the beach. The problem is at the time when the facility is completely full, and it's highly unlikely that people using a beach are going to be able to use the bathroom at that point in time. It's probably going to be a line in there from people who are actually using the facility for eating. Those are the two things that occur to me. So
the fact that there's 130 people there for a half an hour, it's that you're supposed to have it's a certain flow per day. Each seat is calculated on that basis.
I certainly agree with that, but interestingly enough, I was unaware of this large number of individuals who are not taking part in any, just simply be encased in the 124 seats associated with the septic system, and then we need the owners of the establishment to control that more vigorously. That's simple. That's all I'm asking for. I think the planning board is safe at this point in their determination of 124 seats. I think that's appropriate. I believe that the Board of Health needs to further address the term seat, because these were not counted in the flows associated with the high top tables and the finger bowls agreed upon. This is strictly a Board of Health vote tonight and decision, but obviously it does affect other ramifications associated with the planning board's responsibility to this property.
I cannot recall anywhere where this board has allowed a similar situation somewhere else on gallons or anything. So I would like to know what they're going to recommend to us. Let them recommend to us and hold it.
Fix it 4870. That's
We can't change.
We can't change that.
We can't do one thing. The septic system.
We just simply need, the Board of Health needs to define what that 124 will look like.
Yeah. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the main question for the Board of Health is, are you going to accept Richard's recommendation tonight or not? If you are
harmful to the watershed. And the number had been at 89 since 1988 when they did do.
Can be upheld by the state as well, too. So, I hear what you're saying at this point. To disagree. Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
24-person maximum, as I understood it.
Mm-hmm. Briefly.
The decision that I've got, at least the one sitting in front of me, says that the planning board approved back in May, says 124 seats. We raised it from 89 seats to 124 seats. It does not anywhere in here say people.
let's, anyways. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just for the purposes of the Board of Health
Briefly,
vote,
sir.
Just because I know there's going to be a Board of Health vote, and I just want to reiterate that my only issue with Richard's recommendation, so, that's really my issue with it. There's really no support for it, and I don't think that determination should be made.
I think Mr. Cooper.
To answer your question again, I know it seems like you and I just be running around, okay? There's nothing in Title V that has to say that a tabletop is this and a finger bar is this. Title V simply states that they gave you permission for 124. The septic system was designed for 124. The septic system is in the ground, and it'll handle
that.
Okay, well, it's a unique situation here.
It is kind of a unique situation.
So, from the point of the Board of Health, do any members of the board object to
tables with a high top? So I'm perfectly happy to adjust the way we count the seats, but eventually you count people in there eating and drinking. I hope we all agree on that. So I don't have a problem changing the definition, but I don't think it impacts the limits, which are really on the people being served, at least in my estimation.
Yeah. I tend to agree, and I think I don't want to get into an argument about seats because I think the intent and the spirit of Title V is one of protection of the environment, and that's based on their algorithm 124. So I sort of agree with Rick. In August 21st, after a very similar discussion, we came around and said that they could have 124 people seated in any location. And that avoided a lot of the argument. What I would like to hear a proposal from the board or a motion that that those 124 include people at the finger bar and people at the high tops. In other words, that the restaurant can have 124 people anywhere they want to, but that includes the finger bar, the high tops, and the seats.
I think that's what we're trying to say.
That's what we're trying to say.
With the numbers that I alluded to?
And, I really don't think that the restaurant disagrees with us,
No,
frankly.
I don't think so either. I think we've spent 2 hours to come back to some point where we're probably not that far off. Well, it gets into technical things. In other words, if they had 124 people standing at the high tops and no one seated, that's the same as 124 people seated down and no one at the high tops. So in other words, they can have 124, what you want to call it, single service meals, or 124 people total count, and you count the people sitting, and you count the people at the finger bars, and you count the people at high tops, and that has to equal 124.
That's correct, but I think we need an indicator number. And we may find a few more or a few less, and I think we can probably walk away from that. But I would stress that I would like to see a figure of 3 individuals eating at a tabletop would be allowed and would be counted, and 4 individuals at a finger bar would be allowed and would be counted.
Yeah, but you might get in the point where you had people sitting down in a classical seat, and you had more than those 4 people or those 3 people at the high tops and finger bars, and your total may actually be greater than 124.
I don't dispute that, but given the size of
I'm more
the...
comfortable just saying 124 people counted being served wherever they are standing or sitting. I think that would be easier on you, quite frankly. I think so. I don't know. Comments from the board?
Unfortunately, DEP requires an assignment of gallonage, and if we have a specific assignment of gallonage for the 2 types of tables.
I think I started this, Malcolm, by saying I don't mind having that as part of a computation, but that's different from going through and measuring and inspecting the number of people eating. So whether they're 121st seats or who cares, quite frankly. So if it helps the team, I don't mind doing that. That's sort of my
So you would count.
Thank you.
I think I'm hearing a consensus of the board. So would someone like to make a formal motion, so we have it?
Yeah, I'd be happy, you're going to have to help me with the numbers, and I'd be happy to move that when we,
It's three high
three high tops equals,
four
and
finger
3
bar.
seats for a high top and 4 for a finger bar?
Yes,
You got it. So moved.
Second.
as part of the 124.
That is correct. They would be folded in and counted as part of the 124 maximum allowed.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Chairman votes aye.
Thank you.
That action is approved. And if I hear no objections, the Board of Health meeting is adjourned. Any objections? Hearing none.
No, sir.
The Board of Health meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
And I present it back to you. Okay?
Good job.
So, board members, all right, and do I hear a second? Thank you. Do I hear a second? No, we're not going
Continue.
to tonight on I've got at least 3 individuals who want to keep this open right now, and so we'd like to keep the public hearing open.
Are you one of the individuals?
I am. My computer's over here. I will admit I'm the third person.
Okay,
I don't think
okay.
we're here yet.
Okay.
I know I'd like to examine
No,
the data
no.
that you have.
No, I understand. Yeah. No, I'm on board. I'm on board. Yeah. Yep. So,
Make a motion, Linda, I'm sorry.
And-
So there's a motion on the floor, and I believe Mr. Willis up here for the continuance of 11/10, public hearing remains open. Is there discussion from this board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that's that unanimous. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you.
And we will continue this. Mr. Bodett, I would allow you briefly.
No, I don't need to speak.
Kind of move along here.
No, I'll talk to staff, and
Thank
I
you.
just said thank you.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate it. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have other orders of business before us tonight. Next thing before us is 20-14 Sanford Boat Building Condominium, which is 2D Sanford. For the applicant, Mr. Reed, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I think we have a somewhat simpler matter to come before the board this time than the previous one, and I don't think we'll take up very much of your time. This involves what is known as Unit 4 of the Sanford Boat Building Condominium, which has been used historically for office or retail use. It's basically the area where Chip Hart's office used to be. More recently, what's been most recent? The toy store. And the concept here is to have a single takeout station, which requires 5 parking spaces and up to 3 employees. In fact, 2 employees are contemplated, which requires 1 additional parking space, which happens to be exactly the amount of parking that has been calculated in connection on a square footage basis with the retail and office uses. Because this is within, even though there have been previous Board of Appeals decisions involving this property, this is in the MyPod, and therefore all special permit relief in connection with it is within the exclusive jurisdiction of the Planning Board. The parking is, again, we're asking for simply the same parking that's been approved in the past, the same amount of it. The MyPod requires, once again, all special permits to come before this board, and there is a requirement that special permit be obtained in connection with takeout food establishment. The proposed proprietors are here with me tonight. Any questions you have, we'd be happy to answer.
Great, thank you. Go ahead.
parking is at a premium up there. I've had trouble finding parking just to go to the camera store, because there's overflow from the Sea Grill. Everybody sort of commingles their parking. What are the hours of this operation? Any clue?
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, it's the kind of thing that's likely to have a lot of early morning use and through the daytime primarily.
Is it open at
But
night?
it'll be we really haven't determined yet. I mean, I've discussed that with the owners. They really haven't contemplated any specific hours of operation at this point.
Because in practical use, it may be a wash on the parking, but in practical use, when there's something going on at the Sea Grill or something going on in the neighborhood, it's packed. I have to park in the dirt on the other side. When you're getting deliveries, which I hopefully will be the same truck for both places, and it just parks once, it blocks that whole lane of traffic half the time. So I just want to make sure that if they're going to overlap hours with the Sea Grill, that we may end up with a nightmare over there.
I think it's going to be a very different type of establishment from the Sea Grill.
Well, I got that, but there's going to be 500 people going in and out, and the Sea Grill people are going to be parked there all for an hour or two. So I just don't want to create a problem over there, especially with them cutting through on the Craig property across from it. And just as a word of caution, I looked at where your condensers and stuff are going. From an HCC point of view, just a word of caution, not going to be allowed right on the road, more than likely. So you've got to find a place to put those condensers, and it isn't going to be right on Sanford Road. So just a couple of things to sort of look for, because you're going to put condensers, you've got freezers, you've got all kinds of stuff going on in there that didn't happen in there before. But I'm just concerned about the parking issue, because I'll probably use it myself.
Yeah, and I really don't think that the parking, there are places around there right outside the Sea Grill where parking is at times at very much of a premium. On the other hand, if you take a look at the overall picture on the Sanford development, and everybody does share parking out there as a practical matter, I think there are always parking spaces that can be found. I've certainly never had a problem.
Mr. Chairman, through you, just normally when we get a proposal, there's a little bit more information. I'm just curious about what type of restaurant this is, and there's just not a lot of information here.
I'm going to defer to Cabot.
I don't think I need the microphone. I'd be willing to answer. Okay.
Respectfully, I'm going to say
fire away.
For the record, please identify.
Oh, Skip Cabot, sorry. 26 Orkwa.
You'll want to come a bit closer to it because they're not that sensitive.
Testing.
There you go.
Am I doing stubbies or what? No. It's a good question, though.
It's breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
It will be affordable.
But I think Andrew's asking the question that a few of us need to ask, so let me turn it back over to him.
So is it breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Is it?
That's what we're anticipating, yeah.
So, okay. And it's not, is it?
Everything is fluid. All I know is it's a nice building and we have great tenants.
Okay. But this is really important for us to get our heads wrapped around in terms of usage patterns and stuff out there. Right.
That's here. The place is here.
But I think, hours of operation are important to understand how it's being utilized. So those are the things I need that I didn't find it in.
I didn't. No, I'm just wondering if it's primarily takeout or is it?
It's entirely takeout. There will be no table service. There will be tables. There will be tables for the convenience of patrons that they can sit down there rather than taking it away from the establishment. But no service to the tables. It'll be entirely takeout station, and if they want to sit there, they can, but not table service. And we're not talking about more than the 3 employees that would require one parking space, probably 2 employees.
Okay.
Don't worry, stay away from that.
Other questions from the board at this point? Because I think the other thing too is if we can find out as well, just to get a little bit better feel for the.
Well, I can answer any of your questions, so fire away. What's the question?
Hours of operation.
I don't want to be pigeonholed into hours. I mean, that's, well, you know, setting hours is for bad boys. It's like, you know, if you have a problem with me, I'll come back here.
Skip, things have changed since you were a selectman.
I have a statement that I use. It ain't 1970.
Oh, okay. Was that when I was on the Board of Selectmen?
Because, Skip, we have to write a decision, Arthur knows this, we have to write a decision, and it has, you know, it'll probably pick up something out of the ZBA decisions, but there's multiples. But we have to write a decision that has to have some level of specificity. It's not just here, go with God, here, here's takeout. We have to have some more specifics as to how many parking spaces are required, how many they have, they don't have, whatever.
Okay, I just don't think it would be fair to set hours for me, because, I mean, this how the Sea Grill is open until when?
I think what I'd probably say is respectfully, you need to probably have talked with your attorney to understand what the planning board is going to be asking you to do with this. Because I'm not, you know, I hear what you're trying to say, but that I think we need to have some better senses about things, because it's not going to fly in its current iteration.
Okay, but
So it can't be just fluid whenever.
no, but you're asking me if I would accept limited hours, and I would say no.
Well, we had to put hours on the hen house takeout when they did the takeout.
Yeah.
Okay, what were the hours for them?
It closed at like 8 or 9 to begin with.
Yeah, but
and then we extended it because it was very functional, but then they stopped doing it.
Takeout window running till 1 o'clock. So I'm going to respectfully say, this is information you're going to need to provide to us. And if you feel as though that information needs to change, you're welcome to come back before the board.
Change
but
it.
we need to start somewhere.
Okay, what is the board's concerned about the hours? I'm just curious.
We don't have any. We don't know what.
Okay, how about
we don't know what you want to do, so we can have a decision and a discussion and a decision and agree on them.
Okay, 11.
That's all it is.
Okay, how about
And you
6 to 11?
And you could come back in a year and change it. That's what a special permit does. Skip. You can change it, something, after
I know, but you must get sick of listening to us all the time. Right?
No, we love them. Don't you see the West Ender? We love having them here.
That was very interesting, by the way.
Thank you.
Every year.
Just take the hammer and hit it in my head.
Anyways, I think the other thing too is.
I'm not worried about the.
There was a question about dumpster, or where there's 2 garbage bins shown.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Let's reduce this to one conversation, Andrew, please.
Is the garbage bin shown on the site plan what you'll use, or do you know where you have other?
Well, if you don't want a dumpster, we'll take it away every single day in a truck. I don't have a problem with that.
All right.
You can't go by that.
I can't do this by.
I agree, because I feel like every question. Can please, just wait a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Arthur, I'm feeling like every answer here has ambiguous, amorphous content to it. So I'm going to ask for a little help here, please.
Okay, what's the question now?
Andrew, again.
Well, I'm
not suggesting we're ready to make a decision tonight, but let me turn it over to Andrew and see if we can get some idea or at least direction for our next meeting.
The question is are you going to utilize the existing garbage bins, or is there going to be something different, a dumpster, or?
I take it I can answer. Alan LaFrance. Myself and my wife Mary own 3 out of 5 condos in the building, so this is one of them. So because we own 3 condos, one person renting upstairs, I think it's number 2, doesn't use our garbage bin existing already. The other person, Tony, in the camera shop, doesn't use much of his garbage. So I can use our 3 or 4 garbage space container that we have now existing, and I can enlarge that to 6 cans. In addition to that, as Skip mentioned, down at Walters, a similar restaurant to this, they have a practice of taking everything to the dump every afternoon anyhow. So I realize that placing a dumpster down there might impact on the green space additional. So I was happy to see that we can utilize the existing space for the refuse already. And Linda, if I can answer a couple of questions about that you mentioned earlier, about parking and the condensing units. Okay, so we've owned this building for approximately 2.5, 3 years. I renovated this space. I've been down there a lot. I owned it when the toy store rented from us for a year or so. One of her main positive elements of the store was that there was always parking for her clients, and she had a lot of business, a lot of mothers, parents, kids. It is true that whenever they do the Romeo lunches at Sea Grill, and I don't know if that's once a week or once a month, there's a lot of people, and if that happens when he's getting a delivery, it does clog the parking lot. But I must be honest in stating to you that I have never seen that parking lot gridded out in the times I've been there, which has been a lot. Okay, if you experience it, well, I suppose that happens at every space, but in a general sense, there's lots of parking down there. As far as the condensing units location, I simply wanted to use the green space we had between two trees without going to HTC and trying to put something ugly up on the roof. Now, it's feasible that we can put the condensing units on the south side of the building. It's just that it's more piping. And with pipe, you have line loss and all that. So I don't know what your objection would be HTC-wise. I can speak to that. Fencing around them. But
to come into the HDC anyway to apply for those.
Okay.
I'm just telling you, we don't approve those things on the road. So you're going to have to figure it out before you come in.
I don't want to necessarily confuse HDC issues with planning board issues, just so we're clear. Don't spend a lot
okay,
of
I just wasn't aware of that rule, that's all.
Board members, is there anything else at this point?
Arthur, you just got to work. You got to work.
You
with
got to
staff
get it nailed down.
and get something so we can have a decent decision. It's an existing use, but it's not an existing use that's the same.
It's existing
and that's
space,
existing
not
space.
existing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, what-
So the parking issue, I'm not worried about that. I think that's not even an issue because it's the my party. There's plenty of shared use. That's what we want. That's what we've wanted before this was, since this was built, that's been kind of like what happened anyway. But we have to have some formality that we can have, establish a special permit that has certain conditions, and I think that it will work fine.
What additional information are you looking for from us?
Hours,
Hours,
how the trash is going to be dealt with, because you won't find too many takeout places or restaurants that don't use a dumpster that's secure from rats, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We just don't use trash barrels. You just don't use domestic trash barrels,
Okay,
Arthur.
let my answer to you be, though.
Yeah, the
that-
shared use of the
Have you seen the garbage containers that are down there?
Yeah.
They're double padlocked, they're almost airtight, they're large and rugged and heavy duty. No one's ever had a
Blue kind,
complaint.
those big ones, those big
I would, I think anyone would prefer to see something like that than a steel dumpster.
No, or
Especially-
a wooden contain, a wooden thing
This
that
is
they
a wooden
would hide them.
This is a wooden container with probably 8 different tops and doors. And there's also another unit in the lower level that services the 2 units in the lower level. So each unit has a garbage container and a heavy-duty wooden container with double padlocks that holds about 4 garbage cans. So if you take a look down there, you'll see, I believe it's adequate. And as far as the hours, it wasn't something that we discussed at length, but Skip had just mentioned 6 to 11. I can also tell you there'll be no table service, and there'll be 2 employees.
That's good.
So,
2
I don't know-
employees at peak shift?
At peak shift? Skip, do you need more than 2 employees? Okay.
I've never seen one with 2 employees at peak shift.
Okay, well, I've been working with Scott Coop, who's the manager of Stubby's down there.
It says
And-
3, but a question for you.
Okay.
Food is prepared on-site or brought in from off-site?
All on site.
Okay, so you're going to have venting and everything else that
Right.
has to go to the
The vent-
HCC as well. So
That's
just
right.
keep that in mind.
Right.
I just want to know what's happening in the building.
Hmm?
Okay, so no table service. Proposed hours are between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. open to the public,
Yes.
because you're going to be there, obviously, outside those hours. 1 takeout station. Andrew, is this going along all right?
Yep.
All right, one takeout station, hours 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. For service to the public. No table service. Maximum of 3 employees at peak shift. No, just trash will be, how do you want to phrase that? Trash will be contained and removed on a regular basis.
It's very securely contained. Anyone that will go down there will see what I'm saying.
Okay, we have to put it in the decision.
Okay,
because every restaurant has a trash thing.
Will be contained and removed completely
and removed
on a
from
daily
the premises
basis.
on a regular basis.
That's
Is that
correct, Linda.
working, Andrew? And we're talking about just Unit 4 at the moment.
Yes, just Unit 4.
Okay. Does that work?
Well, I got probably a question, too. Go ahead, Andrew.
Just, is there any additional lighting or exterior changes?
That's coming to the HDC, too.
There happens to be, somebody had complained about the visible lighting on the building, so we're in the process of putting 3 or 4 lights around the building that have a completely shaded point down. Downlighting, right. So we're already doing that. I don't believe there's any general lighting in the parking lot. I'm not sure. No. So I guess I have to answer unless you specify so. I hadn't thought about outside lighting other than what we have.
Any other exterior changes that we need to talk about? Any exterior changes to the outside? Windows, doors, anything?
Windows, doors, no changes to the outside aside from the install of a fan exhaust and the 2 condensing units, which will go to HTC.
Andrew, with this change of use of the building at this point, because this does maybe generate a bit more in terms of traffic consumption and stuff, is it still consistent within the general scope of when that building was first designed?
Yeah, it meets the bylaw requirement, so.
I just want to check in.
Yep.
Same with the tabletops inside too, although there's not a service, that still keeps us within fair game.
So,
Hang on, Mr. Mark.
Is it handicap accessible, or does it need to be?
it's handicap accessible. They have a ramp
Yes.
that actually goes right to the door.
There's actually two ramps, and it is handicapped accessible.
Board members, anything else? Do you have something?
No, I was just going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
You want to close, or you want to wait for
Let's just take a second here. All right, we'll take a deep breath, and we'll be fine. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you ask me to do that, we'll do that after the next meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, the public hearing is open at this point. Would anyone like to comment on this application?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion. Andrew, do you have anything you need for this application, or are there any outstanding issues from the staff perspective?
Nope.
Thank
I have
you.
enough.
Good.
All right, so the motion is made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'll make a motion to grant the special permit per the conditions we just elaborated on.
To be signed in the office?
To be signed in the office.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you indeed.
Okay, next thing before us is Rice Landing subdivision on Tom Nevers Road.
I thought that got extended.
I'm sorry, yes, it is. I apologize. I apologize. Well, I'm not going to say a word. 3M subdivision modification for Phillips Way, 15 Golf View Drive. For the applicant, Mr. Cohen, good evening, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I hope what we have is a relatively simple application for you. As you likely know, the so-called Somerset or 3M subdivision has a number of restrictions on it that have since expired due to the 30-year expiration of those deed restrictions, but also has planning board restrictions on the number of lots in the area and those sort of things, as well as the use of Smooth Hummocks Road for frontage. And since those planning board restrictions and deed restrictions were put in place, two facts have come to occur. The first is that the deed restrictions have expired without being renewed, and the second is that at the 2007 town meeting, the town meeting voted to change the zoning in this area from R20 to R10. Wait, no?
Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification on this. The zoning changed from RC2 to R10.
To R10, okay. Sorry about that. The zoning allows for 10,000 square foot lots. This is a 20,000 square foot lot. It has frontage on both sides and could be legally subdivided as an A&R, except for the planning board subdivision, approval required subdivision that already exists there. And so what we're doing is seeking permission from the planning board to allow for the further subdivision of this lot. What we'd like to do is to do that in a way that is most harmonious with the neighborhood and does not result in excessive development and does not result in an undue burden on Smooth Hummocks Road, which, as you probably know, is essentially a dirt road that is often in poor condition and is essentially privately maintained by Bartlett's, seasonally, but often can be impassable. The conditions that we would propose be put in place would be the restriction of a single driveway off of Golfview Drive to service both lots, and the restriction against a second dwelling on either lot. And therefore, what you'd end up with is two 10,000 square foot lots, each with one dwelling, that would essentially mirror what you could do now by right, which would have the same one driveway and the same two dwellings, but what you'd have is a separate legal ownership of those two lots. That separate legal ownership does not have any impact on the neighborhood. It's a legal issue, but not a development issue. And so essentially everybody wins. There's no impact on the neighbors, and there's no impact, but my client gets the benefit of having the subdivision of his lot. And hopefully that would set a precedent for the neighbors, because there's another, several houses that essentially are in the same position, that if other people wanted to come in and ask for the same relief, they could do that in a way that would not have the same impact in the way we're proposing it. The application before you suggests that if the play, as opposed to a driveway on either end. We've had a surveyor and engineer look at the lot, and it supports both subdivision and septic use.
Chair, Andrew, I don't believe this particular deed restriction has expired if the planning board was given the right of enforcement. That does not expire unless it's changed in here. Private deed restrictions, obviously, after 30 years. But is that not the case here?
I don't know that I believe that it has expired. I think that it's part of the covenant as part of that subdivision. So I don't think I believe that it's, as a private deed restriction, it may have expired, but I believe it's still enforceable, right, which is why you're here.
Which is why we're here. That's correct.
Okay.
The private deed restrictions have expired and were not renewed. And so there are, for example, deed restrictions against unattached second dwellings in this neighborhood. Those have expired. But we definitely need permission from the planning board to further subdivide this lot, and that's what we're seeking.
Well, I just wanted to clarify that, because you said earlier that the restriction hadn't expired. It really hasn't expired for our purposes at all.
This could not be done without your approval.
That's
correct.
Right. So I'm concerned about the shared driveway, which would access Golfview. Is that what you're telling me? If you're saying you're going to have a shared driveway, which direction is the driveway going?
On the curb cut would be on Golfview.
Golfview is horrendous. I've lost my car in some of those holes, going to a couple of my soccer players' houses. It is horrible. It is so horrible, you try to avoid it at all costs, no matter how you get in there. I'd rather airlift myself into their houses, because this is ridiculous. And the thought of subdividing and putting another structure or another lot or 4 houses on potentially onto Golfview is not something I'm enthusiastic about. We've had other people ask to subdivide other lots in the same subdivision, mostly corner lots, because they were oversized. And we didn't feel that was appropriate either. I'm kind of concerned about using smooth hummocks as frontage. It doesn't really meet the test of adequate access. So I'm kind of concerned about smooth hummocks, and the last thing I want to see is that rural cart path for the farm, basically, paved, improved, graveled, shelled, or anything else. So I'm having, and then the potential for everybody else who backs up to smooth hummocks or is on Gulfview and smooth hummocks has the same potential. Is that correct, Andrew? They're all about the same size.
Any of the, well, we'd have to look at it, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's out there, so I don't have any confirmation about that, but it looks like it's out there on the map. So I'm having a lot of trouble with this at all.
You know, if I could respond to that a little, my client already accesses the house onto Gulfview, as do all of his neighbors, obviously, and what we're not talking about additional curb cuts onto Gulfview. We're not talking. If I came in for a second dwelling permit, you know, it's essentially the same kind of thing. The conditions that you would impose on a second dwelling permit would be fairly minimal.
My concern is that you, right now, you have one, potentially a secondary dwelling, because that has potentially expired. But you're asking for a potential 4.
No.
Total.
No. So one of the conditions that I recommended as part of your approval would be a restriction against a second dwelling on either lot, so that there would be no additional development beyond the 2 dwellings that he could do as of right now.
Well, let me tell you, if I'm going down this road at all, literally and figuratively, Gulfview Drive would need to be improved, stabilized, so it doesn't do what it's doing right now, which makes it virtually impassable, especially in January and February. So I'm not happy with this at all. I'm not happy with the potential that they're all going to domino down the road the same way, and nothing is happening with that road.
Well,
and the original subdivision, which none of us really sat on, the original subdivision, I don't think contemplated the amount of use that Gulfview's getting, potentially, and thus it was not required to be paved like everybody else was. But Gulfview is a disaster once you get past that initial turn in the road. So I don't know where to go with this. I mean, I'd rather see it paved, but, you know, I think that's out of our purview at the moment. But they didn't contemplate any of this when they set that road up.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Andrew.
Mr. Chairman, again, just a point of information. I think surprisingly it was paved, wasn't it? It just hasn't been maintained.
Sand, oil sand.
Yeah, Mr. Whitty, please. That's okay.
Disappeared.
It was paved.
What happened?
Philip Whitty.
Thank you.
Gulfview is paved and was paved. There are potholes which have been filled in since they did some electric work there, and they filled it in with sand. So, Linda, you can go down there now. It's perfectly all right.
Sand isn't my idea of
No,
what
I
we
understand.
require as stabilization,
I
just so
understand,
you know.
but it is
It's going to go elsewhere.
It's a paved road. And as another point, in answer to your question about the domino effect, there are only 6 lots
6 too many.
that would qualify to subdivide at the moment.
And that concerns me.
That may be, but all of the lots on that road are not subdividable.
No, the ones on that side are not.
Only on the farm side,
North side.
and only 6 of them because of size.
So that's why I'm concerned, is because of that potential on this horrible, whatever you think it's left over there.
Well, I live there, so I know very well what it's like.
Perkins is, and I used to go down there all the
And
time.
it served the purpose of a speed bump, actually, so people won't fly down that road like they want to do.
No, but you won't come out of it either.
That's right.
All right.
So that's my concern.
Board members, anyone else want to comment on this?
I'm
Did you
up
have
for
something?
anything.
Joe?
No, I'm good.
Sorry.
And as far as Andrew, can we just have a little discussion on the proprietor's road issue and any of that stuff? I mean, can this road eventually be, you know, a town road, county road? I believe that, I'm just saying, for improvement to the brewery, to farm, you know, this stuff comes up. It came up in other things. Forget about what Mr. Whitty wants to do. That neighborhood doesn't want Gulfview fixed because they don't want it to be a cut-through for the farm and the brewery, which I understand that, but that's the truth. But if Smooth Hummocks was a real road, it would spread the cars out from Hummock, getting to the brewery. And it would allow, I know this has nothing to do with this project, but that's what is everybody's mind is already thinking about that, so why not talk about it? Because if it could happen someday, then this frontage issue is not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
What can happen legally with that road someday is my point. Thinking the future thinking.
Mr.
Go ahead,
Chairman,
please.
the road was.
Can we listen to Andrew, please? He has the floor. Thank you.
The road was laid out by the county in the 30s. However, they never properly followed through and did the actual taking of the land. So it was laid out at some point as a public road, but it has not become a full public road because, like many of the layouts at that time,
Yeah.
they didn't follow through with an actual.
But it's legal to have frontage on it.
It's, in order for
I know,
the board
but the
to
public
sign an
hearing isn't
approval
open
not
yet.
required, it
Sit
has
down.
to have minimum widths, grades, and construction acceptable for travel.
Yep.
And then in addition, there's the additional requirement, because it was in a subdivision, it needs to be released from that requirement. They cannot claim frontage now with the restriction.
Yeah, and my client doesn't want to see that road improved. And although, on the flip side, I think that people going to the brewery are fine using it and frequently do. The quality of the road and the lack of it being a paved public way has not stopped anybody from using it to get to the brewery.
No, I understand that, Steve, but what I'm saying is that nothing is ever going to be improved if we do this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Golfview's never going to get improved, and neither is Smooth Hummocks, because they're fighting each other. Smooth Hummocks would have to be fixed in order for no one to use Golfview if that was fixed. One has to come first.
So
had this conversation with just about every single person on that road over the last 15 years. It's true. But I'm not against giving the relief. I'm just saying, from a town perspective, from a futuristic thinking perspective, that those roads have to stay terrible to be acceptable unless Smooth Hummocks was improved, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no,
Okay? That's just the way it is.
I think that's right, that the neighborhood doesn't want them that usable, wants people to avoid them.
Kind of silly, but that's just the truth.
So, hold on.
Well,
that's what I'm getting
Mr.
at.
Lowell has the floor.
That's why
Again.
I'm saying it. We need to tell the real story out here before we start down this little road. I have no issue. As far as I'm concerned, when you can get frontage on a paper road that's not even built, I don't see a difference in this. Okay, but you can get frontage on paper roads that aren't, that are just be a dirt road. That's a public road. What I'm saying is, in this particular case, because it's not really a public road, and there's a lot of confusion with it, and I'm thinking about what could happen down the road. That's all. Where it could be a real road. That's all.
Yeah. Well, all we wanted to do is to conform with the zoning that the town put in place a few years ago, with appropriate restrictions to prevent overdevelopment. We don't want to see this whole string of lots become 4 houses. But since they can go to 2 now, that cap is fine.
See, Steve, this stuff pops up, the one on Meadowview 2 years ago on the corner. We just had one at the old subdivision, and these are all these 80s ones. It's interesting how they're all the same in the sense. They got the one big lot on the corner that never was going to be. You know what I'm saying? We just had that happen at Mizzenmast, okay, the other day, the last meeting or the meeting before. Not against it, because people want to subdivide. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that this particular area is a little bit, it has another reason why it's that road is not getting fixed. Okay? So. But whatever the legal thing is, I'm fine with it.
Hold it for a second. Mr. Marklinger?
I have one little thing. The house that will be built on the new lot, wouldn't it make sense to have it be 20% bigger or 20% smaller than the existing lot?
Only if they're on the same lot.
Well, because then it would be the appearance. Well, I don't know. I kind of like. I think it's,
if the planning board wanted to impose that,
we could make that
mirroring that condition, it would be an acceptable condition. But I think that, as Linda suggested, the HTC is going to require some kind of relationship anyway.
So, just go ahead, ask.
Does this lot have any rights in smooth hummocks? If they don't, they cannot use it for frontage.
That's why we're here.
No, we can't grant you rights in smooth hummocks. We can grant you the right to subdivide, but we cannot grant you the right to access, to pass and repass, or whatever it is over there on smooth hummocks. We can't grant you that. We don't have control over smooth hummocks. If you don't have any deeded rights to use smooth hummocks, is that correct, Steve? Then he cannot use that for frontage. He certainly can't use it for access. That's a title issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd be subdividing a lot that can't go anywhere.
Isn't it true that my restriction to smooth hummocks is because of the planning board?
What we're seeking is a release of the restriction. I mean, I think that's an issue somewhat outside of here. What we're seeking is a release of the restriction by the planning board.
It could be a restriction with no meaning. Because you can't get the frontage of both lots on Gulfview.
I understand your question, but
Okay. So if you don't have any rights in smooth hummocks, we're not even discussing accessing or improving smooth hummocks because you have no rights there. You would have to create an easement for access through the other driveway, which again brings me back to everybody having to access Gulfview with the potential of 6 lots. So that's just where I'm going.
Go ahead. Did you have something, Mr. Cohen?
No.
No. I am going to say something to you. Even with A&Rs at this point, we still look at the roadway, and you can't argue the fact that we don't, because we do look at it if there has to be an apron put into place, if it's a dirt roadway, whether it needs to be regraded to certain areas, if there are turnouts that need to take place. We look at it.
Sure.
Okay? Because we are about passing and repassing. I'm not going to. I have to agree with Linda at this point. Gulfview Drive needs to be fixed. There's no question. I'm having a little problem with the neighbors enjoying the fact that Gulfview Drive in its current form really doesn't. Yeah, I understand. I mean, I know I've been down there a few times and I've almost lost part of my suspension on the vehicle. It's nasty. Okay? That is one thing, as a board member sitting here, I think you would need to address.
Yeah.
And that the status of it not being a public road, I think brings me to it's either a public or a private road. There's really not a lot of in between here. It needs to be taken care of. The other thing, too, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but just the other thing, too, is that as you begin to set this wheel in motion for your applicant, it doesn't fail me either that there are other people who are on that roadway, not unlike Mr. Whitty, in the same condition, that can start doing the same thing. I think we would be remiss that if we don't act on this being the first one, everyone's going to have the enjoyment of saying, well, you should have addressed it then and there.
Yeah.
So I want to try to catch this up front. And if it is going to trigger that level, even with 6 potentials out there, I'm not feeling like smooth hummocks just comes right off the table. Okay? Because all of a sudden that Mr. Lowell has said this infinite times beforehand. We're not looking at 2, 3, 5 years down the road. We're looking at the 20, 30, 50-year picture of what happens with it. I think we've tried to learn from our lessons in the past. So here we are again, and I believe our attention is turning toward how's it going to flow when the rest of all this happens as well, too.
I think on the short term, and I understand that you're taking the long term, but if we were here seeking a second dwelling permit, the conditions that you would look at are visibility, improvement to the road, emergency access, and those kind of things. And I think if you look at it from that perspective of what would we want this to look like if there were 2 houses on each lot, because we would not be seeking to do 4, the board would probably suggest that there be some contribution to a road improvement fund or some designated road improvements, and my client is definitely willing to consider what would be appropriate. Either we could suggest something or staff could suggest something so that the burden wouldn't be all on him, but might be shared.
And I hear you with the reduction, okay, but let's be clear, it's not an A&R. It's not, okay? Because you're offering that, yes, I know in the past the board has waived certain requirements, okay? But I'm not going to personally allow this conversation to go any further because of lot reduction. It is an A&R, okay? It's 2 separate issues that are before us, and like I said, I know part of my responsibility on this board is the ability to pass and repass and the condition of a roadway.
Right.
So
and my client would be willing to contribute to a fund or to make specific improvements, not pave the entire length of the road, but to, do an appropriate remediation of that road commensurate with what we're talking about granting relief in the same way you would look at it if this was a second dwelling improvement, second dwelling permit.
And I think I'd like to find out from staff what that level is, looking at it not only from your client, but also what it's going to mean if you trip the rest of the people on that roadway into the same place.
Sure, that's appropriate.
So go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, too, I think Linda her point is critical here.
Yeah.
I think that you have to provide some title information that shows that you do have rights. I don't know why you wouldn't. It seems to me the property is described by the way, and that would give you the right to it. But I think you need to answer that question. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
We could submit supplementation of that.
Okay. That would be helpful because that will open up its own process as to what happens with smooth comment. I do want to open the public hearing. I just want to make sure our board is set. Okay. Public hearing is open. Mr. Bartlett, please. Thank you for your patience, sir.
Good evening, John Bartlett, 6 Myoxus Way. I also am the manager of the Bartlett Farm LLC, which abuts most of Smooth Hummocks. The issue of whether or not this happens, I think the board's kind of hit the nail on the head. It really, for me, is more about improvements in maintaining the existing situation before we open up anything else. There's a lot of things that happened in the 1980s in building on Nantucket that not all the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. And I think this is one development that's had a couple of things that have happened along the way. Certainly one being maintenance of the road. There's a huge watershed in that area that runs pretty much the length of Smooth Hummocks in the southwesterly direction down towards the farm. And the farm's fields are basically the watershed for Gulfview, Farmview, and Smooth Hummocks. At one point, there was some stipulated drainage easements on Farmview that, for whatever reason, weren't recorded properly and not enforced. None of the drainage structures on Gulfview, in my estimation right now, are currently functioning. The road's not maintained, and I think to open this up on a case-by-case basis is really not a good planning technique. As Nat said, there's lots of things to look at as far as public access and safety issues. The farm has taken it upon itself to maintain the road, to at least keep it passable for emergency vehicles, as that can be problematic at certain times of year, just being able to pass and repass the road. So certainly, as a property owner in the area, we at this time would encourage both. I don't know if it's MP and EDC, but the planning board certainly, as far as this, I think this comes more into an area plan or a neighborhood plan or something that really needs to have a much larger scope to address the additional traffic that would be put, the additional cars that would be put on the area, and to make sure that the proper improvements are in place before that happens. We all know that houses can be moved on lots, and things can be that don't currently look like they could be subdivided now would be able to happen in the future. It's also an area that's in the needs district. I don't know what's going to happen with sewer in that area, but there's a lot of things in play coming down the road. And so I just think that this needs a lot more research into whether or not this is a good idea from an area perspective, not just a single property owner.
Thank you. Did you have a question for him?
Yeah, Andrew, John mentioned the needs area. That would be a potential another 6 septic systems right smack next to the farm. Is that a concern of yours also?
This to me is really a planning issue.
Right.
And,
Thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The TV's on.
The TV's on.
This is really a planning issue, and how you handle development, and what density that brings to an area, what improvements should or should not happen in that area. Drainage water's already there. If sewer's going to come there, parking, where are all these additional vehicles going to go? Are they going to end up in the roads like they have everywhere else, even though we say they're not supposed to? I'm not against further development in this area. What I'm against is development in this area without having the infrastructure to support it. The infrastructure in a lot of ways is not there now, and there's runoff and drainage that's happening on private property that's supporting other private properties' land use, and I don't feel that that's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
Mr. Chairman, I agree with the general sentiment. I mean, that's the reason we changed the zoning in the first place. That area was zoned for 5,000 square foot lots before it was 10,000. So there's been a significant change already. The board has invested quite a bit of time already in addressing the issues. And I would certainly welcome an area plan that included the Bartletts, because they have property that needs to be considered under rezoning and phasing out of the RC2, which we've had discussions about, too. Mm-hmm. So, I'm all for having, a broad look at the general area. It needs to include, not just this area, too, but also some other properties there, which hopefully we'll get to tonight.
Yeah. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to comment on this? Not seeing anyone.
I'll make a motion to continue to November 10th.
Okay.
Second.
Yeah, that's okay. Motion's made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Catherine, I think you denoted that John left at 8:58 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to endorse
Stop for
all of the
1 second.
A&Rs.
Stop for 1 second, because this is really important.
Oh, you can't
I'm
sit.
out on the first.
Yep.
7743, so Mr. Marklinger is going to recuse himself from that. So let's just deal with that one right now.
I'll make a motion to endorse 7743 Bruce Hayden, 20 McKinley Avenue, Sconset.
Okay. Second. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Great. Now,
I'll make a motion to endorse 7744, 7745, 7746, 7747, 7748, 7749, 7750, 7751, 7752, 7753, 7754, 7755, 7756, 7757, 7758, and 7759.
do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Have you considered a career in bingo calling?
Oh.
Yes, my lilting tones.
Is there discussion on the issue? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have unanimously. Thank you. Good job. That was great.
I'm also out on the second dwelling.
On John Lamping?
Yep.
All right, so let's deal with that one first.
I'll make a motion to approve John Lampy, Middle Valley, per staff comments.
Okay, and do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. All
I'll
right.
make a motion to approve Jim Burns, 1 Gardner Perry, 79 Eel Point Road, NT, 79 Eel Point Road, James and Ann Deneau, 16 Lincoln Avenue, per staff comments.
Do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Previous plans, 7661 Woodland Hill subdivision. This is an endorsement of the plan and legal documents. We're actually ratifying a vote from September 8th to endorse the legal documents and plans.
So moved.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion on the issue. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. It's 4-0. That brings us to, unless anyone has any public comment, we've got a little bit of an aggressive schedule before us, so let's talk about updating the master plan compliance. Andrew?
Mr.
This is
Chairman.
important stuff, so let's be clear about we need work before us. Go ahead.
You have a supplemental packet, and on it is the zoning district implementation schedule, which was revised by the board on August 8th, 2011. So we have some changes that we want to go through and ask you to vote on those tonight. In the master plan, we had hoped to phase out the R Island Home and ALC district by 2014.
Yep.
Because of some of the developments with Sherburne Commons and other things, we propose to move that to 2020.
Okay.
R1 district in the Country Overlay District, that was originally scheduled for 2013, and that was partially accomplished. Mainly that still exists in the Wauwinet area. That area has not formed a area plan group. We would propose to move that to 2018.
So, okay.
That's okay, we'll get,
Yep.
just let them run.
SR2, which is a district to be phased out, again, we have a concept for that, but haven't mapped it yet, and again, that's going to take some additional work. We would also propose that for 2018. The RC district, originally proposed for 2015, we would propose for 2017. That's been partially implemented, and then we are on schedule with the remainder of the district to be phased out.
Do you need a motion for that?
I have, yeah, those, and so those are our basic changes.
All right, and everything else is pretty set on this above and beyond?
We're either in progress or completed.
All right, so, yeah, you're...
I'll make a motion to change the timetable as noted by
Okay.
Andrew Vorse.
Do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Motion's now made and seconded for discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it unanimously. Preliminary warrant article plans. Hard to believe that's starting to happen, but it
is upon us.
sure is. Yes, it is.
I included in your packet just a basic zoning map, which I don't know if all of you have that, but you need to be familiar with it. I updated our zoning districts by land area, which I think you should all be familiar with. We have a very preliminary list, and I'm not going to tell you that it won't change, that some additional articles may be added, some may be taken away. But we wanted to give you at least a preliminary proposal, and if you had any additional ideas, we want to hear about them, not necessarily tonight, but in the near future. So let me just find my list here. Okay, so just very quickly, under the technical amendments, we have 4 accessory use definition. It's a question that we get a lot, so we proposed adding that. Ground cover definition for finished space below ground. There's been a few of these where bulkheads have been converted to some sort of living space. Our amendment last year didn't do the trick, so we want to get that right this year. There is a unexplained adjective in the special permit regarding 4181L lots, where it talks about new violations, which has, again, caused an interpretation problem that we want to fix. And Town Council has flagged the next issue that we really should be using one or the other. It's either a special permit or a variance for increasing pre-existing non-conforming ground cover. The ZBA has done it both ways. We want to pick one. We think special permit is the right way to go. So that's bylaw technical amendments. The next is substantive bylaw amendments. On the list for us to look at is the ownership of the covenant units. This is an issue brought before the board by Dave Fredericks. I'm not sure that zoning is going to cure this. I think that it still may need to be a covenant issue that corrects this. The issue was, could there be an intra-family transfer, and then the covenant would take place once it sells out of the...
About that, because remember in Maine, I sent you something,
Yes.
somebody sent me from Maine.
Right.
They're doing it, and this is what I've been on this hunt for 2 years trying to get it. So they're not, family members are not subject to the covenant.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Split them.
Yeah.
Even though they're sub-minimum lot, because we have several families that are waiting for this in particular.
Right. I'm not sure that zoning is going to cure this other than, or at least zoning with a covenant change, which has to be adopted through another board. So anyway, it's on your list again. Accessory dwelling unit. This is a provision that is well-intended but not used. It has restrictions on it that make it unusable, including a requirement that it has to be a year-round resident. In many cases, an accessory dwelling unit would be a great addition to a year-round resident's house for seasonal housing, and it would help towards that crisis, whatever. There's other restrictions that make it not used. It's basically not used. We only have a handful of instances where it's ever been used. That tells us that it needs some revision, so we're going to be proposing something. Major and minor site plan review, Leslie has provided you. I don't need to get into this tonight, but we really need to streamline districts. We want to expand that to the commercial Mid-Island district, which we haven't mapped yet, and do some preliminary mapping on that. So we're going to have a proposal for you on that. We also may come up with language that allows for a combination of detached apartment and commercial. Right now, you either have a mixed-use building or an all-apartment building, and there may be an opportunity for a mixture. Last year, we talked about, as part of phasing out the limited commercial district, the issue in the North Water Street area where people wanted to be more in the residential district with very limited commercial. I've included a map in here, which looks like this, where we looked at it's a quarter-mile radius, so it would be within a walking distance, which would encompass the LC district. So if that went to ROH, you would still be allowed by special permit to do inns in that, and it covers a lot of the existing inns that are pre-existing non-conforming, would bring them into conformity. So I think that was a helpful suggestion developed from last year. And Linda, I know, gave a lot of feedback into that as well. The R5 and R10 limited districts. This is a concept we've discussed with the Pine Valley neighborhood. You know, they were one of the first neighborhoods to go through out of the RC2 district. We have an R1 district to deal with. We have the R5 district as a one-size-fits-all maybe doesn't work so well. And so we've talked about the preliminary at this point. Brant Point area plan, we need to revisit that issue, which again is the limited commercial. That's supposed to be phased out by 2015. In Surfside, we've had different groups that are interested in changing the LUG2 zoning. There's a group at Lover's Lane, Ochre or South Shore Road, where we've done some rezoning there. There is an area along South Shore Road, the southern part of below the current LUG1 district.
No, towards, no. He means towards south. He means towards the south. Down South Shore Road to the south, headed towards the sewer plant.
Everybody down there is conforming to 2 acres.
Well, I was approached by neighbors. I said, you need to bring back signatures of 2/3 of the affected parties, and they did that. So it's something that, again, that's usually our standard. If there is neighborhood interest in that, and okay. The other area in Surfside is there's some property owned by the Richmond Group that we've talked about as R5, which is around some of the R5 that we did last year as part of that site planning.
What is it right now?
It's a combination of R20.
You want to go to R5?
Well, again, I look at across the street, if you layer your zoning districts with higher density closest to major roadways, across the street is Noshup, which is...
Oh, we're talking about, I was looking at Daffodil and Evergreen.
No. Daffodil is not really, maybe a portion of, at the end of Daffodil, Evergreen. That's an area that's currently in the town overlay district and LUG2, so it's not in conformance with our rules. It's really more of an R40 type area.
Yeah, so it sort of backs up to Boaz.
Correct. Right.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Sure.
Because I see Dave Visco's here. He's the one that spearheaded the South Shore property.
Yes.
And
the two gentlemen
so
here.
What'll be our next step? I think they might want to know that.
Well, the next step is an actual warrant. Unless I hear any objections from you, there will be a warrant article developed, and the board will vote to sponsor it unless they follow a citizen path.
Right.
So.
How far back do we go? Do we go back to Rachel, Zachary, Tripp, or how far back are we going?
Go ahead.
I don't know. It goes to David Visco for Rachel Drive. Goes to from Korea Lane all the way to Zachary Way. And I think...
And what about the other side of the road?
Yeah, it affects some of those lots on that side also. And there might be some other people that are interested too. Right. I mean, I started this thing and it's kind of snowballed, so everybody's really enthusiastic about it.
What about going down Korea, down?
Yeah.
It's not just fronting on South Shore.
No.
It's going off this
all the way down Korea Lane. Kind of creates I don't know if he has the map there, but it creates there's a whole block kind of.
Oh, yeah. There's a list. Again, with any of these changes, we probably would include the entire area focused on South Shore Road. There's two people I know at the end of Folger that wanted to be included. So there's a group that we will be bringing forward.
There might be people on Tripp Drive also. I never talked to anybody there because when I started out, it was just going to be a small area, but now it's...
Right.
Once you got to my house, I knew it was just
it should be. Well, things change, and there's certainly an area that's changing a lot.
Yeah.
And we,
feedback as far as Morgan Square, those are right proximate to the beach and all that stuff back there. Those farther back past Ben Moore's, that's where it gets a little dicey.
Again, there are two property owners that asked to be included. It'll be included in the article through the planning board's recommendation. If you wish to vote them out, you could do that.
Morgan Square also?
2 of the 4 lots in Morgan Square.
You have to remember, Lug 1 is big. There's Lug 1 and Polk.
All right, let's not hammer and take this tonight. Let's see where it goes. Go ahead, Andrew.
Again, just on this point, the master plan called for a significant reduction in the LUG2 district, and there are other areas zoned LUG1, Monomoy, Squam. There may have to be some consideration of the sewer district expansion, which we talked about as well.
Sure.
Okay. We need to all be on frequent sewer. We live next to the sewer.
Go ahead.
Where was I? Let's see. Teasdale Circle, Yawkey Way, these are all in RC2, and the proposal, depending on whether they're commercial or R5, which is the same density, residential density as RC2. There's the Nobodere multifamily projects, so Park Circle, Hinsdale, those all would be more properly located in a residential district, R5. That's part of the RC2 phase-out, as you know. Old South Road, Jeff Kashulik has come in to talk about rezoning at least his property, which is RC2, to a combination of CN and R5. It's something we want to explore with him. Surfside Road in the vicinity of Myacomet Avenue is still in RC2, so that's either a CN or CTEC designation. Bartlett Road, there's a outlier left in RC2. That was fairly deliberate to allow that property owner to finalize what he was doing, so at least some reduction in RC2 at that particular location. Perry Lane, Salros, and Nobska are all still in RC2. So I don't know. The list gets quite long. Those might have to be put off to another year. We had originally thought Bartlett Farm Road, Hummock Pond Road, this is the brewery, Bartlett Farm, that entire area might have a plan together. It's not together, so that won't be proceeding. You can strike that one off the list. Somerset Lane, several years ago, we changed the LUG2 district there to R40 and altered the town and country overlay district. And some lots were not, again, by choice included. So the new owners have a different thought on that and want to be grouped with their R40 neighbors. We had a citizen ask about a new lane in King Street from SR1 to SOH. It's the same lot size, different ground cover. Again, but it cures, I guess, some nonconformities that the house meets the particular standards of SOH. Westchester, there's an R1 and R20 issue that is not on your list. 2-4 Fairgrounds is still in RC2. And a group of neighbors across Fairgrounds have asked for us, they feel they're impacted by the fire station, or will be impacted by the fire station, the police station. They want to be considered for commercial, and that would be from Fairgrounds Restaurant to the corner. Yep. So you may see an article on that. And then Washington Street, which is not on your list, this is the area of the subdivision where it's currently RC, where we want to change that to ROH and CN. And there's a map in your packet to look at.
Yep. We're going to CN in areas that have a lot of residences. I don't want to see residences X'd out of these areas.
Didn't we change the CN to fix that?
Not really.
Because that's what happened with
There's
the
a lot
Beach
of
Street thing.
primary dwellings in some of these, some of them, just very specific ones, that are real concern to me.
Mr. Chairman, the single-family houses that become pre-existing uses can continue on to be used for their purpose.
Right.
But that's making them all non-conforming.
Can I say something here? This is really a preliminary set of warrant articles,
Yep.
okay? There are multiple opportunities. You have the list before you tonight, so if some of these are burning issues that you feel you need to discuss with staff, then I don't think this is the forum I want to do it in right now. I want you to kind of vet it out through them, because that'll give them some guidance about where we're going to go with where town meeting is going to track as well, too. So let's just, because this is a fairly aggressive list, which I see getting trimmed down somewhat.
Right.
And that's what Andrew is asking us tonight, is he's looking at the bigger picture of things. We're going to guide him into the process of where that goes. And even, too, like with the neighborhoods, thank you, gentlemen, for being here tonight. That's great. I wish you guys could be role models for half these other individuals, because that's part of what we expect with the planning board. If we're going to come into an area that people are like, yeah, let's do that, we want to see them showing up and saying, yeah, we believe in it, too, because I think that is what really will make or break an article at town meeting at times. So thank you for being here tonight. Good. Is there anything else on this list?
No.
Thank you.
If you have...
No, I'm just asking respectfully here.
Citizen warrant articles close on November 24th.
Yes.
And again, we would submit planning board-sponsored articles by December. So we still have a couple meetings in between. But again, I don't want there to be too many surprises. This is the general direction.
And I know we had a special meeting last
Right.
Yeah.
can't really do it in this environment.
No. And we
No,
have to have
I
public
don't.
hearings on all of these, and...
Right, absolutely.
So what,
There's-
so do we have a tentative draft schedule for any of these in
At
between?
at your next meeting, you'll be looking at draft warrant articles.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, good. 4181 ayes, Andrew.